All right. So as a mental performance coach in the sports psychology, side, like getting back to recruiting for a second, one thing I always try to remind my players is that 80% of baseball is played below the D1 level. And a lot of
Yeah.
D1 is not even fully funded.
Oh yeah.
So you're really only looking at like maybe 50 full-fledged, fully funded Division One 11.7 scholarships. You
Yeah.
know, where does the mental side come in when trying to talk to a teenager about that reality and helping him realize that like you might be shooting over the stars here with your college list?
You mean when they have like a full list of D1s and they're hoping to get a full
Exactly.
ride essentially?
Like from the sports psychologist's perspective, what's the best way to approach a kid who delivers you a kid who can play in college delivers
Yeah.
you an unrealistic list of schools?
Yeah, it's a hard conversation. And there's a need to have that needed
It's the hardest
conversation.
one
And again,
I have to have.
yeah, and I think it goes back to the standard foundation. Like you're building a house and you recognize that you're starting to build on the foundation and it's not right. You go back to the base and start over again. And I think I don't want to give you a cop out answer, but really like it stems back like, can you go back and have that conversation? Because if you're just a coach who's like pushing this guy along and you're not investing on that foundation of a relationship, you can't have that conversation that will be able to be productive and guide him towards a new list. If you don't have that, you're going to get pushback and resentment and say, oh, well, coach doesn't think that I'm good enough to play where I want to play. Whereas if you have that foundation, you can ask open-ended questions. You can reflect on what they've said, why they've given you that list. You can summarize for them. You can ask scaling questions like, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, do you really think that, or on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can get a scholarship offer from Wake Forest, from Clemson, NC State? And they'll say, well, here's this. And then if you have that relationship, you can say, okay, well, here are some analytics or here is some information regarding what these schools look for academically, athletically, um, standardized testing wise that are requirements. And based on this, they don't match. But if you don't have that relationship, that becomes a coach is being kind of a dick and he doesn't want me to pursue my dreams and he doesn't want me to be successful, when really it's no. The whole reason we're having this conversation is because I want to guide you and help you realize like what is realistic in terms of you getting to where you want to go. Now listen, if you want to go for it and have a few stretch schools, I'm not a guidance counselor per se, but like go for it. But ultimately to tackle the question at hand of like, from a mindset, from a sport performance base, how do we go about that conversation? It's making sure that you have the relationship and also making sure that the person is being heard rather than feeling like they're being attacked in response.
I think that's a good answer. If they know you care about them, the hard news is delivered and they might not even know how to take it at first, but they have to reflect on like, this person cares about me. So they're telling me this for a reason, you know? Yeah,
Also,
that,
yeah, also
yeah,
something you can do is like, you can say, hey, if your buddy who you knew wasn't going to play at North Carolina gave you this list and you thought he was a D3 fringe guy, like how would you go about that conversation? How would you tell him that?
right.
And like make him in your shoes or like role reverse and just play out that conversation and be like, I'm trying to have that conversation with you.
I feel like that's kind of how I try to go about it. Like I've asked kids like, well, with this school right here, if you're the coach of Clemson and you're looking
Mm-hmm.
for pitchers, like what is the velocity that you're looking for?
Right.
And if they say like 78 miles per hour because they throw 78 miles per hour, then I'm going to
Yeah,
go
if you're a
ahead
lefty
and say,
from down
do you
here.
want to take some time to watch the Clemson game from this past Friday? They have some digital
Right.
music.
Yeah.
So I always try to like put, like you were saying, like how do you ask questions that kind of puts the responsibility on them to be truthful with their answers.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really tough. It's because like I think about, I'm putting my therapist hat on now. It's like if I'm working in a counseling session and like they want to do something, and I don't think that's necessarily the best thing. It's not necessarily my place to tell them what to do, but it's time try to have that conversation, build insight, and kind of talk about like every action has a consequence. So like something makes you want to do something to lead to a behavior which has a consequence, positive or negative. And it's like, I mean, hey, if you want to go try out for Clemson throwing 78 as a righty from 3/4, like there's a consequence to that. If that's what you want to do and you don't think that what I'm saying is helpful for you, that's ultimately your decision. I'm just trying to help you with, in terms of like providing you insight, more so than like advice, just helping them with insight and helping them, break down why is it that they think they can do that, or what is the overall thought process and towards that school.
And I guess just build like what you're saying in the very beginning of all this, like awareness. Like, are you aware of how college, but
Right.
you taking the time to actually sit down and research
Right.
these programs? Like, are you aware of it? So,
Exactly.
all right.
Yeah. 100%.
So with young people in general, I've been teaching for 10 years. I started at an interesting time. It was 2011 or 2010, right? So I saw that boom of that perfect crux of like social media blew up at the same time that the iPhone became kind of like a disposable,
Oh
consumable.
my gosh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen the kind of like the fourth dimensional growth of some of the mental behaviors that are resulting from this. So my
Yeah.
question to you is like, you're much more qualified to speak on these things. So I guess, do you see common mental stressors, not necessarily just young ball players, but young people in general? And like, what are the common stressors, the common traits and behaviors that you are starting to see with some of these kids, and bringing it back to, I think full circle, like, do you feel like social media is perpetuating some of these issues you're seeing?
This is a really loaded question, and I will gladly tackle it because I think it can be a blessing. I think it can be a little bit of a curse. Personally speaking, I have utilized social media in ways that have not been productive, and I have utilized social media in ways that have been extremely productive. I think about on the productive side is connecting with people, right? LinkedIn, Twitter. Twitter for baseball coaches can be really awesome resource to like see people's ideas, start conversations, and get to know people virtually. On the other hand, it can also be really, really overwhelming and not productive because all of a sudden people start to compare themselves to others. I think that's the biggest thing. If you think about a platform like Instagram, no one is posting an ugly picture of themselves. Like people are editing their teeth, they're, removing the bags under their eyes, they're propping up their shoulders so they look more broad. Like there's a lot that goes into an Instagram post. And I think the most common theme of social media in general is like the comparison game, and it's like, well, who are you, and why is it that you want to compare yourself to that? And when I reflect that sort of thought process towards my lack of productive engagement with Twitter in particular, like I think about my process of being a college baseball coach for a year and a half. I coached high school ball. I've been coaching travel ball. Now I'm a mental skills coach at the travel ball level. I'm going to be working with some high school and colleges as well. But when I made the shift from high school to college coaching, I dove into Twitter. One, because the American Baseball Coaches Association podcast was a really cool resource for me. I connected with the liaison of the college department, Jeremy Sheetinger, goes by Sheets at the time. And like that was a really cool way to stay connected to people who were a part of the organization. However, what started to happen is that I became result driven. I said, oh, this person's over here. He's the head coach at this D2, at this D1, at this Division 3. I want to be that guy. So I started putting up stuff on social media, on Twitter, like really simple things, but it was coming out of a place of like, hey, LSU, here I am, hire me. And it's like, that's not productive. All of a sudden, I'm not intentional with where I am. I'm working at a Division 3 in Connecticut, and I'm thinking about why I'm not being hired by LSU. And it's not helpful. And I think to continue on this train of thought of social media and the iPhone, it makes it so hard to be focused on one thing at a time. Like I intentionally on this conversation, and maybe you can see it if we watch this back or once you release it, I toss my iPhone onto my bed, like out of my reaching distance, because if I have it on my table next to me,
Scott flip
right,
phone, man.
right, if I have my iPhone, which has all my meditation apps, all of my text messages, all of my emails, all of these apps that are really, you know, helpful at times, but other just like kill time, like Instagram, Twitter sometimes. Like all the kids watching TikTok these days. I have TikTok too because sometimes I need a minute, right? But if I have that right here and I'm talking to you, I'm gonna go like this every now and then. So if we're practicing at home, away from the baseball field, like being attached to this thing, this iPhone or all this social media, we're actively practicing splitting our attention to when we go to perform. The number one goal is to be focused on the right thing at the right time. So we're really preparing our mind to struggle. So I think that's the common theme that I'd recognize, not just for athletes, but in general. Like having a cell phone that has all of these things, it's cool product. I don't think anyone could have imagined how it's impacted our ability to pay attention to one thing at a time.
The
Circling
psychology.
back to the,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough. It's hard, and I think it goes beyond just it goes beyond just performance. I think about like it's hard to remove yourself from that thing that's right in your pocket or on your table when you're trying to spend time with your kids or you're trying to spend time with your significant other, and all of a sudden you're having a conversation with your significant other and you're staring down at your phone where it's like, all right, hold on, let me be here.
I did a writing journal with my seventh graders this year where I found these images of just people, people in everyday situations, but they cropped out all the phones or tablets or whatever. And I just, my writing journals a lot of the time are just write. Like I'm all about endurance. I don't care what you write, not really spell it right, whatever, but just write. I want you to get
Yep.
your mind out. And the
Yep.
response I got from those kids were amazing. And the thing that really got to me when I was reading them is like they were all, even as 12 and 13-year-olds, they're very honest with about how they feel they are affecting them and their families, but also kind of accepting that they themselves have a problem. Kids were like openly talking about like, man, I do have a problem with this. And
Yep.
I think, and again, I don't know, but I just try to observe. The thing I noticed a lot of young kids is it's almost like they don't want it anymore, but they can't stop it. And the reason I say that, because with my 16-year-old, he's not huge into it, but he's a smart kid, and he's, we try to have those combos. And my whole thing is like when you and I were younger, I'm 37. I'm not sure how old you are,
Mm,
but
25.
okay. So I mean, you probably still remember days where it's like, you go outside, ride a bike a little bit, got kids running around,
Yeah,
on the playground, and the internet is the playground now. So when kids want to have a
it
social,
is.
that's how they hop on there and talk. And the thing you said about the Instagram, you know, it's not real. And
It's not.
you present it as it is real, but the problem that happens there too with the psychology, I feel, is it's like when, like, if you go 100 years ago and you lived in a small town, right? People, mostly rural towns back then, everybody was kind of known for something. Like that guy's the best butcher, and that guy's the best singer in
Yep.
the choir, the church choir. And everybody kind of had a respect, but now we all see each other, and no matter where you look, someone's better than you. And it's it's hard to have kids realize that, like, you're not in competition with those folks. Like, you don't need to be better than them. You just need to be better than
Oh,
you were yesterday at whatever it is you want to do.
100%.
But I think with the whole Instagram thing, like, I can't imagine being a female right now and just, being 14, 15 and hopping on Instagram and just seeing all this, and people are
Yeah. Yeah.
making much more money
Hundreds
than
of
public
thousands of
school
dollars.
teachers,
Yeah.
just because they're putting these fake photos up. And
I agree.
man, like, I just, I feel
There's a,
good.
no, sorry to interrupt you. I just feel like there's a big, it kind of relates to like people. I'm trying to connect this to like the pandemic right now, and maybe it's not the right way to go about it, but like people are afraid of being vulnerable. Like people don't want to open themselves up to be seen for who they are. And like you think about relationships, like you have best friends, you have people you hang out with in school, like you're opening yourself up to a potential emotional difficulty if you're no longer that friend, or that friend moves away. But we don't think about it that way. We think about it as like, oh, this is someone who I relate to, I get along with them, they're cool, you name it. But when we go on social media and we make a post, it's like, for a lot of people, it's like, how can I make myself look better than these people, like you're saying, or how can I look myself in a way and like portray myself in a way that will be accepted by people, where it's really like, why can't I be accepted for who I am?